Hey guys, it's Matt. Welcome back to the channel, Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. And today I have a dedicated book review that I'm really excited to be doing. The guy that wrote it is an excellent human. He's a veteran, a self-pub author. His name is Casey Sutton, and his debut novel is Malfus, Necromancer Unchained. And I'm so excited to get to tell you guys about it. Finally, it's taken a little longer than I thought it would, but with 4 kids, sometimes you just don't get the time you want to read. As always, anytime I do a dedicated book review, it is to be assumed that it is spoiler free. I'll always put that in the titles regardless, so you're reminded. And anytime that I do a spoiler discussion or a review of any sort, you will be warned. And if you guys want to support my channel, you can always hit the like button, subscribe, and have some discussions in the comments. I'll leave some other social links below, my Patreon, my Instagram, my Twitter. I just started a Reddit page, so I will also leave that. So this is a grimdark story about obviously a necromancer. He starts out chained up to a horse by Inquisitor Deza, and they're going through a terrible sounding place, definitely a dystopian world this is. Specifically, he starts out in a place called the Scar, and it's the desert, and you can feel this just by the words that are written on this page by Casey. He gives very visceral descriptions of just a terrible place to be if you're a necromancer tied up to a horse being dragged along the desert. And so the Inquisition simply is arresting the necromancer for necromancy. Inquisitor Dez is taking him to be tried and brought to justice for his acts of necromancy. Inquisitors generally, if you've read fantasy before, they're not nice, flowery people. They like to torture to get their answers, and it kind of follows that same trope, I guess. So he is being dragged, which, right, you'd think that is torture enough, but there's some other things going on that are pretty creative in the world of torturing by Inquisitor Deza, and it's really fun to read. It's descriptive. You can really feel the heat and how just terrible and gritty this place is that they're going through. Basically what happens is they're ambushed by some critters named gnolls, and they're pretty gnarly, and I love them in this book. They're really creative. It's a very creative monster to be created by Casey. He did an excellent job with describing these characters in the book. I'm not going to go into it. I really want you guys to get your own vision for it when you read it. It's really fun. But they're ambushed, they meaning Inquisitor Deza and Malfus, the necromancer who's being dragged while the Inquisitor is on horseback, by these gnolls. And that's where the adventure kind of takes off. It doesn't let up until about halfway through the book, and we kind of hit what you would call a slow burn. And honestly, I can see this area of the book being where somebody might DNF it. If a slow part deters you, if you have to have action through the whole entire book, the middle of this book may be the point where you DNF it. I don't recommend that. That is absolutely a terrible idea in my opinion, because you need those times to really appreciate the magnitude of the action times that you may get later in the movie or in the book. And there are some 800-page books that I've read where 500 pages of it is building a character or building the world, and if a trilogy or a series, and this is the first book and it's 800 pages and 500 pages of slow burn. I also think that's necessary, because The Wheel of Time is one of those books for me. The Eye of the World, it was slow for a lot of it, but if you don't have that very instrumental part of the series, then you can't appreciate when the action finally does happen, or you don't know this character or that character as they're introduced into the book. So the story slows down a little bit is not a bad thing in my view. So after this section of what I would call a slow burn, I was very impressed with this epic ending to this great debut by Casey Sutton. So you really, and I like to say it like this, it's just, you're at a stop sign, in a muscle car, okay, and you're just kind of, you got this built up tension, you just know something's going to happen. You may have been wanting it, anticipating it for 50 pages or so, and then finally you hit that gas pedal and you take off. And I was very impressed with the last third of this book. I was impressed by the whole book, but especially the last third of it. It got to a point where I was ready for the story to take off again, and it really, really did. My positives and the negatives that I found in this one. So we'll start with the positives. The positives: great character building, great world building. You definitely feel like you're in the life-sucking place that takes place in this book. I absolutely loved the magic system. So when I say magic system, I don't mean as in like a hard magic system, something Brandon Sanderson would do. If you're familiar with necromancers and what they do, it won't surprise you. I wouldn't have guessed that this is a debut novel. I really wouldn't have. In fact, if you would have told me that it was a published book, I wouldn't have thought anything about it. I wouldn't have second guessed it. The writing is very, very, very good. It's fantastic. And honestly, bravo to him, because as you guys I'm sure know, self-pub authors do everything themselves basically, and that includes finding an editor, that includes getting that edit back and fixing things, and whatever happened in that situation with Casey specifically, it worked out very well. Epigraphs, I know that there's people who like them and there's people who don't. I love epigraphs. You know, if I have 10 books in my TBR and I kind of go through them or whatnot, and 2 or 3 of them have epigraphs, those are the 3 I'm going to be choosing from. This has really good ones. They're usually quotes. There's a couple pictures. The hardcover does come with very good illustrations, and you see the illustrations, it goes right along with the page you just read. So it gives you a chance to have your imagination, the way you think things are happening, and then from another perspective, which the more perspectives is really a good thing in my opinion. I love it. You know, if somebody has a different opinion on how the story sounds to them or how it looks in their head and they want to explain that to me and it differs, I really enjoy that rather than just being an agreement conversation, because really nothing gets accomplished and nothing gets better from just agreeing all the time. So perception is very good. The negatives, really not many, guys. I said that there's a portion of the book, the middle of it, it was a little slow, and the slowness didn't bug me, and it's not the reason that it's a negative, is the fact that it was a slow burn in the middle. The story kind of halted a little for me, personally. So the story and the action and whatnot kind of slowed down, and there were some parts that I thought you don't absolutely need to finish this book or need to know. Maybe some filler dialogue, but the story slowed down. That was my biggest thing. At the same time, when the story picks back up and the action picks back up, you find yourself thankful that it slowed down so that you could now be so excited to get to the action. The other negative I have for the book, and I noticed it from the very beginning, and you know, some people it may not be a thing, but to me it was the white pages. I know people are like, oh, every book pages are white. Look at your books, guys. Take a piece of copy paper and hold it up to the pages in your books and you'll know what I'm saying. These pages are white. So I had an issue with that. It was a little harder to read. And honestly, I didn't know that I preferred a off-white or beige page color. Now, I'm not talking about on a Kindle or your phone. I know you can adjust the settings. The rating that I'm giving this book, it got a solid 4-star rating from me. The only thing that kept it from a 5-star rating personally was the slowing down of the story in the middle of the book. I do think part of that was necessary. I do think that made the last third of the book that much more enjoyable, but it gets a solid 4-star rating.